All right, everybody, how we doing today? We're a little short-handed today because Tanya's out, so I'm going to be sitting over here, kind of running the screen and going through the documents that we're going to use in preparation for our first listing appointment. All right. Before we get started, do you have any questions that maybe followed up from last week or something that is not on topic we want to hit first? Okay, I'll take your silence as thing. All right, so I'm going to go into zip forms. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so I thought I'd just kind of start from scratch on this to kind of reiterate how we do this. So just follow along. If you have your computers open, if you want to follow along and do this too, it might be helpful just so that muscle memory kind of gets in there. So if you need to give you a second, I can wait for you guys to open your laptops. How many in the room here have had a listing? 2? Sort of. 3? Okay. The 2.5 of you, Anita, you're not a half person by any means, but just for the meeting means this. The 2.5 of you, what was your biggest challenge you thought moving in, like preparing the paperwork for the first time?
Maybe knowing all the information about a house. I mean, luckily both of them have been in MLS before, so
Yeah.
I'm able to pull a lot from that. But
Yeah.
I have a potential new listing coming up, and there's nothing in MLS
Yeah.
about the house.
Right. That makes it tough, right? When the RMLS information is there, we kind of lean on the previous agents to have been correct, which is a little dangerous. I've actually made that mistake once back in like 2002. There's this really cool house at the corner of Schaefer Road and Mountain Road in Stafford. And it's really unusual because it's like on just an acre. It's on a really small lot for that area. And the house is kind of builder grade, at least originally was. So it's always been really kind of inexpensive. And it turns over a lot. It's kind of like this transition house for some reason. It's like every 3 years the house gets sold. But we helped somebody buy it, I think. Or we represented, I've done 2 transactions on it. And so I think the first time we went off the previous listing information, which said the house was like 3,800 square feet. And we figured, okay, it's 3,800 square feet. We assumed that information was good. I think we looked at the trio and we were able to like kind of make heads or tails of why that number was different. We thought, oh, maybe it's just because there's more space downstairs than we thought, because those trios aren't always accurate. And so anyways, we went through the process, and just before closing, just as the appraisal came out, they said, oh my God, the house is only 2,800 square feet. We're paying for a 3,600 square foot house, not a 2,800 square foot house. We know we want to renegotiate. And we were like, no, we're not going to renegotiate. Like you've been through the house. Like you like the house no matter what size you thought it was. You were like, it's kind of ridiculous reasoning. And we kind of, they canceled, we let them out. We resold the house. It was a big deal. There's some verbiage at the bottom of all the listing documents to say that the bottom of an RMLS documents, like you print out like a buyer full. It says all information deemed reliable, but not guaranteed. So we were kind of like, that's what we leaned upon a little bit, but we made a mistake. And I learned a lesson. It's like, you can't always trust the previous realtor to have been accurate in their description. And so, I'm not suggesting taking a tape measure out and measuring homes, but definitely look at the tax record. And if there's a discrepancy between what the tax record says and what the previous listing says, then you need to rectify that with a discussion with your client, figure out what the difference is, why. Maybe they have an appraisal that shows it's bigger than it was. Who knows? But you need to rectify that. So don't always go on the information that the previous agent gave. Okay. So let's start a new transaction here. And so I'm going to click on the button, which is, sorry, I don't do this that often. New. All right. So we're going to do a new listing. And for those of you that have created a template, this is where you could load your template. I'd suggest doing some of that, like putting some of the bare bones stuff in there. loading in the documents that you want. So if you want to take a list of the documents we're going to use today, maybe that'll be helpful for you in creating your template. But so the category is residential. Okay. Let's call this 1, 2, 3, 4. First Street. All right. I'm gonna save it. Okay. So it creates this page right here where you can input some of the information like the address. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's dark over here, so forgive me. It's in Portland. Okay, some of the stuff like the subdivision, school name, like we don't need that information. The legal description, we probably won't need that information for this either. So I'm just going to skip a lot of that. Okay. Now we're going to start adding documents. So you click on the documents button here. And go over to all forms. So there's 2 ways to do this. I like to start in the RMLS because I'm going to get this listing, right? I'm not just going to this listing appointment just to do it. I'm actually gonna get this listing. So I'm gonna go into RMLS. Well, forgive me, I need to know my codes. Yes. All right. Sorry, folks. All right. Okay, so there's 2 places we can actually start this. We've created a file in zip forms where we can add documents. So we could go into zip forms and there's a library in zip forms called RMLS documents. We could go right there and print them out. I prefer to go here, and the reason being, I'm going to start entering information anyways. So I might as well start actually populating the listing for RMLS, right? So it seems like that's, instead of doing it twice, we only have to do it once. It's a little bit more tedious later. We're going to have to drag and drop a few signature things if we're going to DocuSign the listing documents, but otherwise there's no real difference to it. So I'm going to go to back office here. Okay. Listing load. And then I'm going to create a new listing. Okay. And I don't know if this address actually exists anywhere. I'm going to be out of luck here, guys, on this address. Sorry. Let's try. Oh, gosh. Hold on. It's unexpected trip up here.
So we have to do an actual.
Yeah, you have to put in an actual address here. Hold on. Let's see if I have anything stored in here already. In progress. Okay, we'll do this one. So this is a house I listed and sold a while ago. I'm gonna delete this and start fresh.
It's just.
That is actually a property I sold. Is that funny? Isn't that funny? An odd address? I can't remember what the zip code is. We'll figure that out later. Okay. Okay, so I've selected my property address. It's linked by the tax ID number right here. And then my broker code, my code, county, all that information is input in here. And I'm going to continue to the back side of the listing. And this is where we would input a lot of the listing information. So, so Tracy, on your next listing appointment you're going to go on, you're going to want to bring a copy of this printout so you can start filling in the information, because there's no previous listing on it to go off. So you're going to have to go and fill out all this information yourself. So you're going to probably talk to the seller and ask them what your heating source is, all that. And we'll circle back to this, but let's get to the contract first. Okay. All right. So the contracts part's pretty easy here. So this is I'm going to create this stuff, and then I'm going to be able to print it. I'm going to be able to create a PDF of it from it later and drop it into zip forms. And then we can move it to DocuSign, or we can have it signed with wet signatures at the listing appointment, however you guys want to handle that. So the beginning here, this is what the RMLS listing agreement looks like. So we're going to have, it's an active listing, so we can choose the date that marketing is to begin here. Probably when you're going on the listing appointment, before you've gone to the house, you probably don't know what this date is yet. So you're probably going to have to leave this blank. There's also this coming soon, no showings option, which is kind of cool. RMLS won't let you advertise or market a property until it's actively listed, unless you just can't. There's no workaround on it. If you use the coming soon option, you can, for 21 days, up to 21 days, have the property with a sign in front that has your real estate sign on it that says coming soon. You can have flyers in that that talk about the property that say coming soon. You can advertise it in RMLS, which you have to do. You have to advertise it as coming soon in RMLS, where you can have all the photos you want, you can have all the information you want there. But and you can share it with other realtors and with your clients and customers. What you can't do is you can't outwardly promote the property anyway. So you can't go on Instagram and put, hey, coming soon. That's a violation of RMLS rules. I see agents doing it all the time, and it grinds me, because we have, like 75% of the real estate market is adhering to these rules. The other 25% aren't, and they're getting kind of an unfair advantage by it. And there's one realtor in particular who does all the time. It drives me mad. I don't report them. That's not really my style. I wish the RMLS would police this, but they kind of look at us to police it, which I think isn't fair either. So anyways, I think the coming soon is a great option. Some of the big teams here use it all the time, and it's a great way to get a sign up in front of the house, get phone calls on it, because no one can find it, right? They're going to drive by it. They're going to go on their phone. They're going to try to figure out what's up with this listing. Buyers won't be able to find it anywhere, because it's not on any outward facing website, which is kind of great in some ways, because they're going to call you. You're going to get a chance to talk to them about it. You cannot show them the property until it goes active. All right. No showings at all until it goes active. All right. So this is one of the things you're going to talk to your clients about, how they want to market the property. Knowing how you can utilize these tools is really great. So having this conversation with them is a good conversation. 21 days, maximum amount of time, coming soon, and then it has to go active. Okay, there's this box here where you can check excluded from RMLS, but that means you just can't advertise it to anybody. No outward facing advertising at all. And I don't know why you would do that. Usually this is clicked if you are, like if you get a phone call from somebody and you're doing like an off market sale that's already kind of been prearranged, would be a situation where that would happen. Because otherwise, how do you find a buyer when you can't market the house, right? Not excluded from our, not, if you check this button box, you can't do any advertising at all. Anything, nothing. Yep. Yeah, you could, in the fine for, the fine's like $1,500, up to $1,500 or up to $5,000 or something like that. Like RMLS can impose a really, really strict fine for this, so. List price. So again, you probably don't know the list price before you go to the house. If you do, you can input it, but you wouldn't input it here. You actually would get input right here. So if 550 is going to be the list price for this house, it's now auto-populated here, okay? That makes sense? Okay. Again, the term is fully executed with all parties and shall terminate. You have to you input the termination date down here. So some of the stuff you may want to show up with it predetermined. The thing is, if you don't know when they want to go on the market, how long do you know you want the listing period to be? So I would leave that blank. How long do you think you want a listing for? Like what's a typical amount of time you think? Yeah. I think 3 months to 6 months. It's pretty good. So like since like 2015, unless it's a really, really high end home or something really unusual, 3 months is plenty of time. I think like you could try to lock it up for longer, but like after 3 months, you may not, like if you can't sell it after 3 months, you may never sell it and you may want to be done with it. So it's not just for you, it's for that. It's not just for them, it's for you. So they may wear you out. Like if you can't get price reductions to get the house sold within 3 months, and it's not, like a $2 million house, then do you want that listing? Unless it's going to produce a bunch of phone calls for you, I don't think it's a good thing. So, okay, something to think about. Food for thought. Okay, we started inputting our list, the list price. So right here, the commission amount's 6%, right? But this would be if we were doing like a flat fee, which we're not doing. Okay, so and then this would be, this number here is what we pay the buyer's agent. So 2.5 is pretty typical. I think you can get away with 2.25 in this real estate market. I mean, you can get away with a lot less, but you want a buyer's agent that's pretty happy to be involved in the transaction. 2.25 is a little bit of a slap in the face, but it's not a punch. So like if you're like, you can't get them above 5% on the listing fee or something like that, I would go to 2.25 on the listing side, on the BAC side, because buyers are going to be driving that appointment anyways. So like you guys know, you get a phone call to show a property. The first thing you do is figure out how to get in, not look at what the commission amount is and decide if you're going to go show it, right? So I think you can get with 2.25. Anyways, again, this is just a flat fee, which we don't do. This next one is disbursement. So if for some reason earnest money would be forfeited by the buyer, this here is where we talk about how that money gets dispersed. I always say 100% to the seller, because one time I actually got some earnest money released to the buyer and to the seller, and it was difficult for us to get it to take a piece of that anyways. I was working at Coldwell Banker at the time, and the person was the president of that. Her name was Gail, and she was awesome, super smart gal. And she was like, look, you can't get paid a commission for not selling a house, and that's essentially what you're doing. So because I used to be 50-50 on all this, but now I'm like, let's just give it all 100% to them, because I'm not going to get it back anyways. So it just looks good. So I always go 100% to the seller. These are just, a lot of the stuff here is just verbiage to say that, hey, the seller has enough money to pay you and pay off all the liens on the property and at closing. Right to compensation. This would be like if you, let's say after 3 months you weren't able to sell the house, somebody who came by like in the second month to see it, came back around and decided they want to buy the house, this period of time would protect you from that, assuming they don't sign another listing contract. So I don't put a lot of, I put a number here, like 30 days or 90 days. You can put whatever you want. But I think once the property gets relisted, you're out. So. We can, really thirsty? I don't know. I always check yes on the lockbox. I always show up with it this way because I want to hang a lockbox. I'm not going to be there opening doors for people every time. What if your client says, oh, hey, I want to put like a builder's lockbox on? What do you guys think about that? Like just like a combo box. Yeah, what's your argument? What's your argument to say no? Because you don't want that, right? Because you're gonna have to be giving out that number. It's so labor intensive. You know how hot the market is? You know, like when you go to showing suite and it's all blacked out, like those are each showings, right? So what if you got to give that number out 30 times, 40 times, 50 times in a weekend? You don't want to do that, right? So you got to come up with a good reason why not to do that. I think that being able to track people coming in and out of the property is the best excuse for doing that. It's also, they're more secure than those little flimsy lock boxes. Okay. Obviously they want to advertise it on the internet. We had a seller that was really odd about, she didn't want her name in the listing. She only wanted a couple photos in the listing. She was really, really private. Luckily the market was hot, so it wasn't that big of a deal. We just needed basically an exterior photo to sell the property, but she was really, really valued her privacy. And we think maybe there was an ex-husband she was trying to avoid or something. So we don't know exactly what it was. But again, you can't sell the house without the internet. I mean, you can put a sign up, but you're going to get lucky drive-by traffic as opposed to where everybody finds homes. They said, I've heard the numbers from recently from like NAR. They say like up to like 70% of homes are found on the internet. I think that's BS. It's got to be like 95%. I mean, I can't remember the last time someone called me up and said, hey, I just drove by this house. I want to buy it. That's not how it works. So 90%, I think, 95%. So internet's obviously your tool. What's that? Okay. Indemnity, this is just legal jargon. Attorney fees, dispute resolution is in accordance with the terms of the National Association of Realtors. So small claims court, arbitration, mediation, all that stuff. Seller shall be compliant with the law. Seller's property disclosure statement. This is just this. We'll get into this a little bit further as we go forward down. So this is interesting. Number 17. This is something I just now paid attention to within the last month or so. Oregon real estate law requires sellers to install approved smoke detectors and approved carbon monoxide detectors in buildings located on the property. Seller will install improved smoke detectors and approved carbon monoxide detectors in the buildings located on the property as required by law. So they've agreed to do it, right? We have that section in our purchase agreement where we have to say they'll be done in so many days. And like, they're already saying it's going to be done. Why do we have to put the amount of days in there? I don't know, but it should be done already. They've already known about it because of this agreement, allegedly.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So on a house that I was just working with, there's no gas in the house.
Okay.
And so the inspector said no need for carbon monoxide detectors.
He's wrong.
So where does the carbon come from?
What's that?
Where is the carbon monoxide come from?
I don't know that it matters. There's no part of the law that says if you don't have gas in the house, you don't have carbon monoxide detector. I've never read that. It's every home.
It's garages that are parking.
Yeah,
Cars that are.
cars parked in the garage, yeah.
There's not a wood burning fireplace and there's no.
The law does not discriminate between that. So if your appraiser is going to come through and he's going to say, where the heck's the carbon monoxide detector?
Very interesting.
Yeah. No, so a lot of the laws, so the contract law that we deal with every day is great. The purchase agreement we have is great. It's really, really well written. It really makes a lot of sense. The addendums are all great. But when things get funny in our industry is when we're legislated certain things like our seller's property disclosure statement, like with the instance you're talking about with the carbon monoxide detector, they're just not as thoughtful as the legislature is just not as thoughtful as it should be in determining these laws. And changing them can't be done in contract. Changing them has to be done by an act of the legislature, right? So getting a word change, getting that exclusion added isn't going to happen. They're just thinking we're just going to have them on everywhere, and that's the way it's going to be, regardless if there's any risk or FERPTA, so this is in here. Try to have your clients sign this, choosing, if they're a foreign person or not a foreign person. Some people might get offended by this. I don't know why. It doesn't really bother me. I've never had a problem asking it. If it comes back uninitialed, I don't sweat it that much because we're hit with FERPTA so much between between the addendum the KW's created and what you're going to hear at closing. Like there's just so much chatter around FERPTA that having this not filled out isn't that big of a deal to me. So when I'm reviewing your paperwork, if you don't have an initial there, I try not to send it back because unless there's a bunch of other stuff that needs to be sent back. I just think it's not super germane. So additional provisions. So this would be like if something were, let's say the seller's been talking to the neighbor and the neighbor wants to buy the property and you're filling it, but they don't want to pay you a commission on it because they're doing all the work on it, right? Or maybe they're going to pay you like a lesser commission about, if the neighbor buys it. How would you suggest dealing with that? Any ideas? Because this is something you're going to get. This is guaranteed. One of you in this room is going to deal with this in the next year or two.
Can't you just do it off the market? Like if you already have a buyer?
Right. But okay, so how do you? I guess like how can you? If you put in here the next door neighbor is excluded from this agreement, or if the next door neighbor buys this property, the commission amount will be so much. That could go in perpetuity, right? That could go on forever and ever and ever. And half the time, and when I say half, I mean like a sliver of the time, the neighbor never ends up buying the property. So what I've always done, and I've done this with a lot of success, is say such and such, put their name, is excluded from this transaction or from this listing agreement for a period of like 5 days. Because if they're going to buy it, right? But otherwise, we're going to move on. And if they come back around, that's fine. I'm going to be spending money marketing this house, right? I'm going to spend money on photos. I'm going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to do internet advertising. I'm going to do a lot. I'm going to spend a lot of money on this house. I don't want to be excluded from getting paid for that hard work. So I need to set some parameter. I need to set some boundaries and say, okay, that's great. Why don't we see if they can buy in the next 5 days? Great. We can work something out. Okay. And there's different ways to do that. One day you can just walk away, not have any part of the sale, or you can facilitate the transaction for a smaller fee. And that's what I would suggest doing. It's better to get paid something than nothing at all, regardless. So 3% of 600,000 is a lot more than 6% of nothing. Okay. Okay, and so we're going to get our clients to sign this and stuff. So that's basically everything that goes to filling out this part of the form. So if you do show up and if you do have a house and it does not have a previous listing history, this is where you're going to have to start filling these things. So every blue place in here is a mandated field. So you can't publish the listing unless these are all filled in. Okay. So we're going to select the map. This is something I just go ahead and do anyways, because I'm here. Just basically double checking to make sure. Yep, that's the one. We're going to save it. The map is now going to be there, right? I don't know why that's not working, but it isn't. I always put the neighborhood. I would put the neighborhood and building in here because some people are searching, like especially if you're talking about the east side of town where neighborhoods are so important. I'd put that in there. Like it's Eastmoreland. People are out there searching for just properties in Eastmoreland, so you want to make sure they're able to identify that, or Laurelhurst or whatever it is. Listing type. So there's two types of listings we're able to do: exclusive right to sell and exclusive agency. Exclusive right to sell means that anybody who buys it, I represent, everybody gets paid. Exclusive right to sell exclusive agency would be if there was someone excluded from the listing, you would do that. So let's say we excluded that person for 5 days. So for 5 days, you'd have an exclusive agency. And then after that 5 days, you want to switch it to exclusive right to sell. You want to make sure that you do this right because you get hung up on this. No one ever pays attention to it except for lawyers when there's trouble. So you want to make sure you're doing it right.
And that's something you'd have to get signed by the seller that update, or
you can change that yourself. The data fields like that, I think you can change those yourself. The comment sections, you can change that yourself. I think the things that you can't change yourself would be the date that the listing terminates, the price, obviously, those are things you need to get approval from the seller from. Or if you're changing the CSN date. So, and I'll go back to that in a second. Limited representation would be, is no in this case. It would be yes if you were just taking a flat fee for listing the property, but you actually don't represent the seller in any way beyond that. So if you see limited representation listings, you see that says yes, that means that it's essentially, they paid a company to have the listing put into the RMLS and advertised. But that's the extent of the relationship between the seller and the agent. Okay.
Would that be like Zillow?
No, it would be like, I'm trying to think of a company off the top of my head. I can't remember the name of it, but there are just companies that you would pay. Just so it's a brokerage. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but there's like a handful of them, and they just upload your information and they walk away, and it'll say, give you just instructions in the listing on how to deal with it. Offers, negotiations, instructions. So I always put call seller's agent here. Obviously, school information is important. So this is something you'll want to double check when you're listing. So go in, find the school district website. Usually there's a tool on there to identify the schools. It's super important. Schools are so important. It's like to me, if you're gonna screw up on anything, don't screw up on the schools, because in certain neighborhoods, that's gonna be like germane to the sale. Like, people are buying homes up in Bethany, Stoller. Everybody wants to be in Stoller. If it's in Stoller and you advertise as something else, you're gonna lose a huge segment of your buyer pool. Or vice versa. You misrepresent, then you can find yourself in hot water.
A lot of school names have changed recently too.
Yeah.
Wilson, yeah.
Yeah, Wilson as well.
Is that what happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if it does change names, though, could you write in there like buyer to do due diligence about schools or no?
So no, I mean, they're supposed to anyways,
Yeah.
but you need to be right. Just because it's more of a marketing, for me, it's more of a marketing thing than anything. Like if people are looking for a specific school, you want to make sure that you have it in there. These are just choices like lot description, view, make sure you're selling the house that you're selling, right? Don't say it's got a great view if it's just got this look around the corner peekaboo view of the mountain, because people are going to show up disappointed. You don't want someone disappointed with the house that they arrive to. So make sure you're being accurate. Square footage here. So I would just go off the tax document unless you knew otherwise. If the conversation you want to have in that living room is like, you have an appraisal, not because you want to know what the appraised value is, but because you'd like to see what the appraiser square footage was, because they have to go out and measure the exterior of the house and figure out how many livable square feet there are. So that could be handy to you, especially if it's more. If it comes to be a bigger number, you would always go with that bigger number. So it's where you put that information there. Choosing the style of house, this is important. I mean, this is a required field. I don't know why it's so important, but it is. Exterior description. This is born by, and to go back on our discussion we had last week about siding, this is all born from LP siding and from EVIS. So that's why this is a required section here. Basements, put whatever you want there. Directions are important, obviously. Private remarks, public remarks. So you can't use a website address. You cannot, you can lead someone away from this website if it's branded, like on the virtual tours here, but you cannot lead them away from the RMLS website otherwise. So don't put like the walk score map here, or go to my website for more information, because that's a violation of RMLS rules. They'll pick that out. Private remarks. It's a good place to give notes that you want to the agent. This won't be seen by the general public. So if you have special showing instructions, or if you want to direct someone to a document they're going to upload that has special showing instructions, use that space there.
Is that where you would put like pre-approval?
Yeah, like if pre-approved buyers only or something like that, which I always think is fun. Some sellers like, I only want pre-approved buyers coming through. So like, are you really going to, okay, great. We'll set up showings. Just send me your pre-approval letter. And like it's a $550,000 house up in Lake Oswego right now. You're going to have showings lined up all day, all weekend long. And then how many pre-approval letters that's going to be? Have a conversation with your client, set an expectation that that's not really tenable to do. Like you just can't. And the pre-approval letters, as we know, they all have different weights of validity. Like, you call Rocket Mortgage up, right? Or not even call, you just get on your phone with Rocket Mortgage, you say, I make $600,000 a year. How much loan can I qualify for? You can qualify for this much, and here's your letter, have fun. Like, that pre-approval letter isn't worth much. So I've always thought that's a little bit of fool's gold, the pre-approval letter. Make sure that your public remarks are compliant with Fair Housing Act. So I think you can say something about schools, but you can't say like she shed. You can't say she shed. Man cave. You can't say man cave. Right. So authorizing to post on public sites, I always say yes. And the property address, I say yes on this. Some people say no. I think if people get mad when they see something online, they can't find the address. I think it really frustrates buyers. I think it gives us a bad name too. So it's like when realtors put flyers out without the price on it because they want the phone call. Half the phone calls you get on that, if not more than half, are pissed off people because you can't figure out what the price is. They don't want to call you. They're angry. It's not how you want to start a relationship with somebody who could be a client. So I always give information out when I can. So I disabled the third-party comments because I don't need people doing that. And I disable the AVM, which is like an automated value something or other. Let's see. So choosing yes in this field indicates the seller wants to disable automating estimates of the market values in immediate conjunction with their particular listing on virtual office websites. So, but I just don't think that we need that, so I don't do it. Room sizes, I think it looks bad when you leave the room sizes blank, so fill that out.
Karen,
Mhm.
do you think video tours are important?
Yeah, especially as the Delta numbers are rising, we could find ourselves back on mask mandates, and people are going to start being wary about people coming into their house and people leaving their houses to go see houses. The first showing starts online. Your first showing is the photos that you have online and the stuff you have online. And I think that providing a walkthrough video or a virtual tour is super helpful in weeding out people who may or may not have wanted to see the house in the first place. So I think it's a great tour. You can build a little excitement. I think it's kind of expected. Again, with COVID numbers, the way they're going, people may be like, I don't know if I want to see that house. I don't know if I want to risk getting COVID today. I don't know if I want to risk getting the Delta variant, so I'm going to stay home. Instead of going look at the house, they may have really found something they liked. Like, oh, I love the layout. I love the way the sun comes through the window or whatever, So I think that virtual tours are a must. And they're like, I don't want to sneeze at like $200, right? It's a lot of money, but if you have a listing, you're going to get paid and you're going to get paid well. So spend that extra $200, and because you're also building something that you can advertise later, right? Like you'll have this example of your great marketing that you can show someone later. It's like, hey, look, I did this amazing virtual tour. Look at my photos and look.
For some reason, I had contact with the Metaport or Zillow. Some reason we were working. I paid for it and I wasn't able to.
You weren't able to get that through. Did you go through Virtuance?
Yeah, no, we did it through media.
And you had a hard time uploading it into Zillow?
I was having
Yeah. There's some glitches with that system. You have to get with Zillow customer support, and you have to be diligent. Because listen, I had when I went my previous job, I had the bat line, right? I could call the Zillow legal counsel up and get him on the phone while he's on vacation in Wyoming, right? But I couldn't get those darn videos uploaded when I wanted to. I don't know, they've got some quirks in their system. But that Zillow product is really cool, and the Matterport one is really cool. Like, when these virtual tours first came out, like in early 2000, they were really clunky. It was really fish-eyed. They really were slow to upload, and you just kind of took a spin around the room and then went into another room. But now you can literally start at the front door and walk through the room. It's awesome. I mean, they're really, really cool. So it's worth the trouble. It's worth, you gotta like bird dog it. You gotta get on somebody. If you're not getting what you want, here's the rule. This is my rule for the day. if you're not getting what you need, like you're owed something, you know it's supposed to happen this way, you've paid for it, and you're calling and they're not doing it, keep calling until they get annoyed, and then call 10 times more. Because the greasy wheel gets the, be nice, but keep calling, don't stop. I learned that when I first got in this business.
So you consider to get it through, like,
Yeah, if you're having problems uploading it, call customer service and be like, this isn't working. I paid for this. I wanted your Zillow tour and I paid for it and it's not uploading. You need to help. How do I get it uploaded?
so whenever you buy, you have to request Zillow.
That's one option. So there's also a Matterport tour, which is just as good. I actually don't know what the benefit is to having it on Zillow. Like to having this, the tour will go to Zillow either way. I don't know if there's like, if you get bumped up in their search order, if you use their tour or not, I don't know.
For some reason, we uploaded in our MLS
Mhm.
and Zillow.
So you probably go into your Premier Agent site, you go into your Premier Agent login, and you can manually upload, you can manually put the link in there, and sometimes it kicks you out. You just got to keep trying. It can be done. I've done, it. And it's taken, and I've been frustrated by it too. But I know I know the area you're talking about. But it does work eventually. But you can go directly to. Do you guys all have do you guys all know your Zillow Premier Agent login information? Have you all claimed your? So if you have a listing, you can click on it, and then like a import. You can input some stuff into there, and one of the things you can do is add your tour directly. It doesn't always work properly, so you might have to. Yeah, you may have to try it. If it doesn't work, come back again and try it again.
The dimensions on this, Kelly, where do you recommend getting that? 'Cause I know there's some liability about us taking the measurements themselves.
I mean, I don't know what the liability is on it. I mean, like if you're going to grossly misstate it, yeah. I take a tape measure with me. If I don't have my tape measure, I'm just about a foot. Maybe like you got 13 inches right there. So I've stepped it off in a house before. It's an estimate, right? They're just not giving you any space to put decimal points. It's like, it's either 12 feet or 13 feet, right? And so, at 12.6, I round up, so. Just click the appliances, whatever you have here. All right. So you're just basically filling in this data as it needs. These are required fields. There's nothing in here. Obviously, one of the things you're gonna want to figure out in your listing appointment is HOA information. Like, you know how much the HOA dues are, what they get for those dues. That's important to know, okay? Because, you know, if it's something great, like if there's a pool, you want to know that, right? And then, you know, date marking begin, expiration date, occupied by, okay? So you filled all this out. All right, we're going back to the contract here. We're going to finish this later because we're not ready to publish it.
For general, like listing information, this might be a silly question, but for how many like bedrooms and bathrooms the house has,
Mhm.
do you just state what's there, or do you go off of the tax record?
I would go with what's actually there.
What's actually?
Yeah. And they should be about the same. And that's a good, if you see a discrepancy there, you're gonna want to ask why. Hey, the city says it's 2.5 baths, but you've got 3.5. Did you do an addition? Yes, we did. Did you get it permitted? Something you want to know. Okay, so we can save and preview this. Okay, we can create a PDF. And we're gonna download it. You can drag and drop it in here, but since I didn't do that, we're gonna have to just go over here. since we're in, while I'm in Zoom here, it doesn't work quite right. But anyway, so we've created the document, we've dragged and dropped it, and we put it in here. Now it lives there. So when we're ready to send this to our client for DocuSign or print it out, this is where it lives. So it's all in here now. So let's add the other forms we're going to need. Okay. So first and foremost, I always go to the disclosed limited agency agreement for sellers. Okay. Then we're also going to need the agency disclosure. Okay. Since this is a residential property, seller's property disclosure statement, and this property was built prior to 1968, so we're going to use the lead-based paint disclosure and protect your family from lead. And this is a great disclosure here. It's one that we created here at Keller Williams. It's called the multi-disclosure. So this disclosure has a ton of things. It has FERPTA on it. It talks about wire fraud, smoke alarms. It's got a ton of stuff on it. So it's a really great kind of catch-all addendum. Not addendum, but catch-all disclosure for your clients. So you give them a lot of information. There's links on it that go to websites so they can get more information. I think it's great. Okay, so let's just cruise through this really quick. We've got like 13 minutes left. So real estate firm, Keller Williams Realty, Portland Premier. Seller's name, your name right here. I mean, sorry, seller's agent name is right here. That's you. This is me. It's always me. And then you put your seller's name there. And this form is stating that you've given them this form to describe this, which describes your agency relationship with them. So it talks about sellers agents, buyers agents, and disclosed limited agents, which would be if you're working as both. Okay. The real estate agency feels like this is the most important form in the entire world. So make sure you are getting that, make sure that you're delivering that and getting this signed. Okay. Seller's property disclosure statement. Okay, so this is another one of those documents that was created by legislature, and so it's a little wonky, and the terms of it are super wonky. And if you guys ever want to get into a history of this form, I'm happy to do it. We don't have time to do it today. But what you do need to know, you're not to advise your clients on how to fill it out. So you don't know the answers to these questions, they do, all right? Or they should do their best to figure it out. They should have a reasonable, if they make an answer here, they should have a reasonable understanding of it, right? So they don't have to go doing a bunch of research, but they should know some of it. So there's a reasonable amount of, I think the term they use is a reasonable amount of research to find answers to these questions. So they don't have to get a law degree. They don't have to call a lawyer to answer these questions. They can't. Okay. So one thing I do advise my clients is to check a box for every single question that's answered. Okay, that's asked. So starting at line 40, and this is the one that gets missed all the time because it's above the board here, it doesn't really fit. Seller is or isn't occupying the property. They need to answer that. All right. And then go through here and answer each and every one of these questions. Don't leave a question line blank because I will send it back. The law states here, and this is law. This isn't contract law. This is law. Please complete the following form. This is instructions to the seller. Do not leave any spaces blank. Do not leave any spaces blank. Please refer to the line numbers and questions you provide your explanations. I'll get to that in a second. You're not claiming exclusion or refund. So a seller can claim an exclusion if they qualify for one of these things here. So it's the first sale of a property. So it's a brand new construction. They don't have to complete the entire form. If it's sale by a financial institution, they don't have to complete the entire form. If it's by a court-appointed receiver, personal representative, trustee, conservative guardian, they don't have to complete the form. Or if it's a transfer from a government agency, they don't have to complete the form. They do have to complete this middle section though. Otherwise, they have not claimed the exemption, right? So the exemption allows them to not have to answer the questions that follow, but the delivery of the form is still mandated. The buyer can then, when you hand this to the buyer, they have 5 business days to revoke the sale by law. This isn't contract law. This is by law. I've had escrow companies release earnest money just by delivery of this document as revoked by the buyer, which is pretty powerful. If you can get earnest money back with just one party signing, that's a pretty powerful tool. So as a listing agent, you want to pay some attention to make sure this thing gets completed and completely and done correctly and delivered immediately to your buyer. Some of these questions here, like with the stars next to them, if the seller is to answer yes to that, then they need to provide an additional page of information explaining their yes answer. So you want to bring this document along as well. And I'm trying to find the name of it. Forgive me.
And then there's Norris property disclosure.
Yeah, did I miss it? Is it up here? Ah, thank you. So usually one page suffices, but if they have a bunch of those answers, then they need a couple of these. But it has to be filled out. So anything that has a star yes next to it needs to have this form accompany it and the number of pages must be indicated right here. Okay. Remember, this is not governed by contract law. This is governed by, this is a legislative law. Okay. So you can't change the rules on this. They're written. It is what it is.
Why wouldn't a listing agent just always upload this to the listing?
I have no idea. Maybe they haven't got it back from their seller yet. Maybe they're lazy. Just uploading it is not delivery though. You have to physically deliver it. But like if you're a buyer's agent and you see it uploaded, I think especially in a competitive market, having it sent over signed is a powerful tool. It's like, hey, we've already seen this. We've already signed it. So when your offer gets accepted, the clock's already ticking on this.
I see a lot of them say that they're required with offers too. So
Yeah.
that counts as delivery then? That
No, absolutely not.
still, even though.
It has to be delivered. I don't think just requiring it in the verbiage just counts. Because what if a buyer is unrepresented? How would they know? So
Like I just emailed it to the buyer's agent.
Done.
Look at that.
Yep. Yeah, so in the purchase agreement, and in the legislation, it says that the buyer's agent is like delivery to the buyer. It's the same thing.
When a seller fills this out, I mean, it's just to their knowledge.
Yeah, right.
Because like, for example, I had, everything said no essentially, and inspection came and they ran the dishwasher, and the dishwasher is just like protruding water
Yeah.
out of the front.
Right.
And to me, that's like very obvious.
Yeah. Yeah,
And in their defense is, oh, I never used the dishwasher.
right. It's really difficult to prove that someone's lying on this, that someone purposely, it'd be easy to say that someone was mistaken in their answer, but proving that they were lying is entirely different ball of wax. So
So you can explain the document to them, but you can't.
I would explain the magnitude of the document. So I would say, look, this is really important. Please answer it truthfully. Answer every single question, because if you don't answer one of the questions, then you may not have, when I give this to the buyer's agent, it may not have been delivery of the complete document. And therefore I've made arguments to get earnest money released because this wasn't filled out properly, even after it had been delivered for weeks. So, and my argument was, well, you never delivered it. You gave us something that didn't have all the answers on it. It wasn't delivered. You just gave us a piece of paper with some forms. It says, please fill out, complete every answer. It doesn't say complete answer questions you want to answer. So that was my argument. We got the earnest money back.
It's so funny, but like, there are some questions where they say like, yes, but no, or no, but no. And like,
Yeah.
just do one, don't do.
Yeah, I see two answers sometimes. I would just say give one answer, but I don't, like when I'm checking this, I just looking for, just looking for one answer. If I get two, you get two. If they're conflicting, then maybe I would want that addressed. But like I said, you don't have to you cruise through it so you know the answers, so you know if there's something on here that that would stand out, that would be an issue, that would be a problem with you marking the property, but you don't have to get into it too much.
I remember there is a couple of lines that you say like that, whenever you say no, and in the bottom it says again, yes or no.
You have to answer the question.
Yes, so which lines are those ones? Because I know that they were like, I had to resend it.
There's-
Don't answer because it's like.
Yeah.
I already said.
So here's an
why should
example.
I put this one?
Right, so here's an example. Are there materials or products used in the systems and fixtures that are or have been subject to recall or class action settlement or other litigation? You would click, the seller click no or unknown, then it's if yes, what product, then you just leave that blank. But then there's a whole other list of questions here, right? Are there problems with the product? No answer there is not what the form asks for, even though it makes common sense that if they click no here, that all of these would be NA. Common sense does not apply to legislation always. So just check the box. It's just make sure your clients check the box. It's so easy to make sure they just check the correct box, NA, 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 NA in that case, as opposed to leaving it blank and then having to deal with a possible, someone like me later saying, oh, well, you didn't fill it out, so we get the earnest money back. And then having to argue that and explain that to your clients. Well, how come you didn't tell me to check the darn box? Right? Just simple. And it's just easier to say, check the darn box, deliver a completed document. All right. So that's that document. Lead-based paint. So your seller needs to fill out you're going to initial right here. Your seller is going to answer these questions here. And then you're going to deliver this along with what? The EPA disclosure, right? You're always going to deliver the two together. Always, never alone. Always deliver to the buyer's agent. And I wish it was just a continuation of this form. If I could have my way, I'd go into DocuSign. I'd go into zip form and combine the two forms so that they live together forever. But the lead-based paint disclosure addendum and the EPA shall always be delivered together per the terms of the purchase and sale agreement and loosely in the statute that governs it.
But for all listings or listings just of a certain age?
Anything built before 1978. Yeah. And this house was built prior to 1978, so that's what we included. So you initial, seller fills it out, then you send it to the buyer initials, they're going to check boxes, the seller's agent's going to sign it too. You're going to sign it down here and it's going to be executed. Okay. So when you send it, keep the email that you sent, maybe put it in your file, save it however you have, so you have proof of when you sent it, because there's a 10-day period that goes along with this document. So upon delivery, and it used to be that the seller could elect to or not to on our purchase agreement to do this. And I don't think that was lawful. I don't think that was was in bounds with what I guess the seller the buyer maybe could choose not to, but the law says that they have a 10-day period or other period that is negotiated. So 10 days, make sure you get it sent, know when it starts, because you gotta know your contingencies, right? You gotta know when they expire. And this is what that addendum looks like, that disclosure looks like. Protect your family from lead in your home. Okay, we have about a minute left. Any questions? I think we went through all the pertinent documents. I actually finished what I started this time, sort of.
So on the coming soon, no showing.
Yeah.
It's just to reiterate that if you don't go live within that 20 days.
Then everything explodes. You create a black hole and the whole world ends and get sucked into it. I don't know. I think you would have to withdraw the listing to do that. I think you can withdraw the listing. So the question was, if you don't hit the 21-day mark, if you're not live on the 21st day of coming soon, what do you do? It automatically goes, right? So there's a date, you have to insert the date that marketing is to begin. And so on that 21st day or whatever date you put in there is the date the marketing will begin. So it automatically goes from CSN to active at that point. So you would have to get an addendum signed by your client saying withdrawing it if you weren't able to hit that date or changing that date. And I think that the RMLS form is a little incomplete. I think it should have the date that the coming soon to begin, the marketing to begin. I think it should have all that stuff listed on it. It doesn't. So you have some freedom to work, but I think it should be, if I was a seller, I'd want to know when you start advertising my house for sale. So.
I think with one of my, I waited until I was sure we were actually gonna list on time.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And so the components of a enforceable listing agreement would have the price on it, would have the date markings begin, would have the expiration date. Like those three things are absolutely key. So if you have something that doesn't have that, if you walk away with a listing signed and you're like, yay, I got the listing signed, but it doesn't have a price on it, it doesn't have a marketing begin or an expiration date, you don't have a listing. So those are really important.
What are the things that can you change anything you want, or what, if you want to change the price, what is the process? What type of?
If you're going to change the price, you have to have an RMLS addendum signed. If you're going to change the status, you have to have an RMLS addendum signed. If you're going to change the date of the termination of the listing period, you're going to have to have one signed. This is a trick we used to do. Dwight used to do this all the time. He used to, if you had a listing that was sitting for a while, you would relist it with a new multiple listing number, and you should have paperwork that would do that. So you would cancel one listing and relist it with a new ML number, and you'd want to get permission from the seller to do that. And so the listing would look new again. It was the way we'd all tricked everybody to thinking, oh, hey, here's a new listing. Or like if you had a big price reduction, you'd want to do this all together to make it look new to the system. But you can't do that anymore because you can do it. It doesn't have the same effect that it used to. But it used to be a clever thing we used to do.
You can see it nowadays.
Yeah, you can see it now. There's no tricking it.
And it goes to the realtor as well, realtors.com, so they see that
They
it
just-
was canceled and it was released.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not fooling anybody anymore. It's just a waste of manpower. Any other questions? Yes.
So the form is more MLS that you uploaded is the exact same as the listing form that's in zip form?
Yeah, it's almost exactly the same, right? So there's two in zip forms. There's two. There's a shorter form, which is just a contract without the data entry piece. This one has a data entry piece on it too. I just do it this way because I only want to do the input once. So I just start filling it out there and then pull the PDF off and I'm good to go. And I think we're bleeding into Dwight's time right now.
No, stay there, we get a quick video.
Oh,
Everyone's so awesome to attend this. Next hour will be better, just so you know. Oh my gosh, thanks everyone for coming. I love it when the classes are full. And there's lunch at the next one, so that's the way that I can pull it up here. Okay, thank you.
it's all yours, Dwight. We're done. It's all yours.
Okay, well, I think
Wait, we need to get,
they got, I smell it too.
Right. so why don't we do this? Why don't we just take a quick bio break, get something to eat, and then we'll jump into how to read a prelim, which will be awesome.